Ayaka, Ayaka. Hello, good evening, wherever you might be tuning in from. Welcome to KDR TV tonight. In addition, we're going to have a discussion today about some of the major issues affecting us as people here in the diaspora and quite frankly, affecting people all around the world. So in the show tonight, we are going to have some of very resourceful members of our community. We're going to lead a discussion about what it really means being a man here in the United States, and more in particular, we're going to focus on racism and the police. So on the panel today, we have with us on the screen Dr. Judy Unduso. Dr. Judy Unduso is a community organizer. She's also a nurse practitioner by profession who works within the Twin Cities here in Minnesota. More than that, she's a mother, a sister, and a wife. We also have on discussion today Mrs. Edith Kerubo Moronge, who is also a sister, mother, a wife. Happened not too long ago, particularly on the killings of George Floyd. Let's start off with Dr. Judith.
Thank you so much for having me here today. It's a privilege to be here. At the same time, as we all know, this has been really a tough week, especially as a woman of color in 2020, when you see that the very people who are supposed to protect and serve with compassion were actually killing a young man who did not have to meet his death like that. And this has brought a lot of emotions in our community. I've had a lot of people calling me and asking me, what does this mean for us Black people? And what does it mean to be here in 2020 when we have a president who is actually encouraging this kind of racism and this kind of treatment? So it's been really hard to have these tough conversations. And I've also seen how people have stood up from all ends to support the peaceful protesters, people who are encouraging and making sure that Mr. Floyd's family can have justice. And knowing that with this world, we don't know how the justice will be. We hope that the family can get the justice they deserve.
One of the interesting comments that came from George Floyd before he died, in addition to asking for a chance to breathe, he called for his mom. What does it mean for you as a mom hearing a man cry in his last words, calling mom? What's your reaction to that?
Professor, she's muted. She's muted. Can you maybe as we are assisting her, can you give Professor Tiso Ayaka that question so that we see her on our side, on our end?
When we work on the technical difficulties, this should be expected, quite frankly, with technology. So if we have Ayaka on, when you see a man, a 46-year-old man, calling for now, your reaction? Okay, careful, take that question on as we look on the technical level.
It's quite surreal to see George losing his life on national television, and I think it has rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. It's not the kind of death that any one of us would wish on anybody, much less somebody who is already in police custody, is already subdued, and it really doesn't make sense, and it's not acceptable in any shape or form.
Is that me? I just had my name. It's not been clear on my end. So I'm supposed to go with question 1. Oh, okay. Oh, thank you. So, first of all, thank you for bringing us on live here to address our people. It's a privilege. It was so unfortunate, but not surprising for me. I knew it was happening. Almost every Black person I know I have interacted with knew that it was happening. It only happened in the open. And people are reacting the way they are reacting because they saw it with their own eyes. What you saw that police officer doing to that Black man, that is what has been happening to Black people for 400 years. That is what has been happening. It's not new. We're just frustrated now because we just saw it. But it came out to the open, and that's why cities across America are burning, because even white people, those who have been in denial, now it was brought to their screens, to their living rooms, their children, their husbands, their pastors, their teachers, their students, everyone could see it. And now we have a coalition of Black people and white people and people of all colors marching together, like Martin Luther said in 1968. And I feel like finally we have a real chance to create real change in this country. So on my side, it was unfortunate, but I was not surprised because I know it was happening, and it's probably happening even in this minute. In this country, America, every 28 hours, a Black man is killed. A Black man is killed in this country every 28 hours by the police. So you can count from the day George Floyd was killed, how many hours have gone, divided by 28. That's how many men have gone down since. It's unfortunate, not surprising. Thank you.
Edith, we don't have Edith back on. We apologize for that technical problem. As we hope to get her back on. Okay, is she on? So she's not on. So Professor Otiso, back to you. What we're experiencing here, as Cosmas rightly noted, this is not something new in this country. And as we see reaction from people not here in the state of Minnesota, but across the nation, and quite frankly, we now have massive demonstrations around the world talking about inequality that happens in the country, the world. But could you help us just put this in context in the U.S.? What are your views on racial inequality in America? Is racism real or just perceived?
Inequality between America's white and black population, for example. You can look at income inequality, which is actually widening. So, for example, if you look at the top 1% of the US population, they actually have more than 20% of US income. And that gap is actually widening since, for example, 1969. The top 10%, the bottom 10% has actually stagnated. Their income has never increased since 1969. If you look at wealth inequalities, what you find is that for every $1 that an African American has, a typical white American has $41. And that will translate to something, for example, a black net wealth of something like $17,000, while the average net wealth of the average white person is $171,000. When you put both of those things together, what you get is some of the worst health outcomes for minorities. So as we're talking about COVID-19, issues like hypertension, diabetes, and whatnot, some of those actually have something to do with the way people have access to good nutrition. And obviously, if you don't have money in a capitalist system, it also means you don't even have access to good food, nutritious food. I think most people here perhaps will know that food is much more expensive in the inner city than it is in the suburbs. And it's actually lower quality food, which is not even nutritious. So which therefore translates to very bad health outcomes for minorities, precisely because of some of those issues. They live in very bad housing environments. And actually, one of the easiest ways of knowing the type of air you breathe is to see where there is a concentration of minorities. And wherever you see a concentration of minorities, you have a high concentration of very, very heavily polluted air, which is why you see a lot of cases of asthma, for example, where you have a lot of black and brown people in this country. So there's nobody in their right mind in this country that doubts that this is not perceived. It is real in more ways than one.
But apologize to Edith. It looks like we're having a technical problems getting on. Edith, can you hear us? Yes. Okay. Please go live, and once you're done, just wave me, please. Your contribution. What do you think of? What was your reaction on the death, and particularly we're talking about racism in America? How real is that from your end? Oh, okay. So can you please work with her on the side so that you bring her on as soon as everything is ready so that we keep on with the program? Okay. So thank you, Professor Tis, again for that contribution. So let's move on as we wait to have the technical problem resolved with Edith. Judy, is racism real or perceived, in your opinion?
Judith, are you here?
Yeah. Well, Dr. is racism real? I mean, I think that is a very funny question to begin with, because depending on who you ask, if you ask any black person on the street, is racism real? That's like a slap on the face. That's like insult. But if you ask white people on the street, is racism real? They'll tell you most of it is imagined, because they are living in the white privilege, so they can't see that the beneficiaries of racism. They don't see it. That's why you see them, even right now, if you watch popular mainstream media, they are wondering why people are burning stores and looting. They are not wondering, they're not thinking about the life that we just lost and in the manner that we lost. Every black man, every black woman, every black child in this country, whether you came here recently, whether you've been here for 400 years, you are a living testimony of racism. There is structural racism. I'm not going to focus on the individual racism, which we can deal on one-on-one. I want to address the structural racism that has forced black people to live in the inner city, where everything is third rate. And Professor talked about housing inequalities, which started in 1968 with the redlining. Africans were forced to remain in the inner cities where houses were substandard, overcrowded, poor quality water, while the white middle class people moved to the suburbs because bank loans were made very easy for them to access, and Black people were not allowed to access bank loans. I want to take you back to a video that surfaced just around the time George Floyd was killed. That lady, Amy Cooper in New York, who was threatening to call police on that Black man, and you know, they seem to have the same last name. They were both Cooper. And listen to the words and the conviction in the mind of that woman. That woman, Amy Cooper, told that man that I'm gonna call police and tell them that there's a Black man here who is threatening my life and the life of my dog. Why did Amy Cooper say that? Because she understands the system. Every Black man, dead or alive, is already presumed guilty. Even before you do anything, you are guilty. When you are taken to court, you're just going there to prove your innocence. The same treatment is not accorded white men. A white man is always innocent until proven guilty. A Black man is guilty until proven innocent. That is why police officer Derek in Minneapolis kept his knee on that guy, because in his mind he was convinced that that is a thug. That is the universal attitude of white people to Black men in this country. So the question whether racism is real or not is actually, it's I don't know how to say it. It's laughable. I mean, it's like an insult to every Black. I mean, look, Daktari, I've been in this country for only 8 years, just 8 years, and I can already write a novel of my own experiences at work, in the store, everywhere, especially in Minnesota. They call it Minnesota nice. There is nothing nice about Minnesota. When you go to Walmart and they're asking you, did you see everything was okay? They're not being friendly to you. When you are trying to fit on something and somebody comes and says, can I help you? Those people are not trying to help you. They're just trying to make sure you're not stealing anything. They have already put a label on you. Every Black man is a walking target. So racism is real. Structural racism is real in this country, as we saw that knee on George Floyd last week. That knee for me is symbolic of this continuous suppression and oppression of the Black man in this country in every way imaginable, from wealth to living to everything. Thank you.
Vision, I can tell from the emotion, really, it really hits home. So still working with the technical team just to be sure that we do have both Edith and Judith on. Judith, can you hear us now? Judith, are you on? No, she's not. Edith, can you hear us? Can you show of hand, please? Okay, so I'm gonna let you chip in your thoughts on racism in this country. What has been your experience? And as soon as you're done, because we can't hear you, just with me. Go ahead. Oh. Oh, she can hear us. Can you call her in private so that we keep? Okay. So thanks, Edith. Sorry for the technical problems. I think the technical team is working on that. So let's move on to what's more. Professor Tiso, do you mind taking us lead on that?
Can say that these inequalities and racism that minorities have been talking about for a long time is actually real. And now they are obviously, and a good number of them, and rightly so, are actually quite incensed to see some of these issues that they are seeing before their own eyes. It looks bad, whichever way you look at it, whether you're a white citizen, a black citizen, that is just a horrible thing. So in the end, it's going to take both, but obviously we can dig a little bit deeper in terms of what is the respective role of each of these populations that we have in the country. But quite frankly, for me, there is a degree to which I do understand racism to be a matter of the heart. And it's very difficult to simply say that it's simply an issue that is only in the hearts of white people. It's actually also even in our own hearts as black people. And we can say, well, it's happening because we're reacting to white hatred. But you can go to African countries and you still find there is ethnic conflict and ethnic hatred, which basically tells you that the thing is already in all of us. It's basically evil. It does not mean we should not fight for justice. It just means that we should know that there is a fair amount of responsibility that actually has to go around, even though when you're in Africa, for example, the responsibility perhaps may be among black people more than white people in some way. And then, of course, if you come here, the roles actually reverse. But we definitely all need to play a role. Yeah.
Experience of racism in America. So the discussion was around, is it real or is it perceived? And then build on from that and talk about the police here in America. Is it a problem with the police or is it with the citizens? Your views?
Me this chance to be part of this discussion. And before I actually continue saying much, I want to obviously share my heartfelt condolences for George Floyd's family, because it's because of George Floyd we're here today. It's also because of the thousands of black men who have died in the hands of the police, again, that we are here today. So I hope George Floyd gets justice, and I hope his family gets some form of peace. So, is racism real? Yes, of course, racism is real. It's not even something that is up for discussion. And we also understand that black men in America have never really been treated as, all remember correctly from history, a black man was considered like a savage, something that is like an animal. They call them brute or something, if I believe. And because of that, black men have really never been perceived as just any man in society who is pursuing happiness just like any other man, and of course any other men are people who are not black. So because of that, there's been stigma. I mean, the stigma of the black skin, obviously from the beginning of time in this country, what has happened over the years is that no matter what a black man has done in this country, they will always be perceived as a threat of some sort, and it's always been a threat to the white man. So George Floyd's death was painful. It was so painful that when I think about it, it just shakes me to the core. Seeing a white man, hands in his pocket and his knees on the neck of another human being, just snuffing life out of him. Not shaken, no matter how many times people try to plead with him, like, oh, check his pulse, The man is crying for his mom. The man is crying for water. He was even saying, "Someone give me some water, please." I mean, when I think about it, it just pains me. And I think about my two sons, and I know that we have to join this fight. I'm probably speaking from different angles right now. My head is just all over the place. But just seeing Floyd die on camera, just tell me, just the audacity and the contempt in this policeman's face. The reason he did that was because he knew that, you know what, we have done this so many times and I can still do it. I can do it. You know, it's something I can just do. I can just take a black man's life. It's not like something that I cannot do. It's something that I can do, and there may never be any consequences for it. But anyway, let's join the fight now. So, is this a police thing? Is it society? Is it who is to blame? There's no blame anywhere, but there is responsibility for all of us now. After George Floyd's death, we all have the responsibility as society to come together and fight this time, because we have seen the evidence. For the longest time, people have been passive about it. You know, a black man was killed by a cop. What was the black man doing? Oh, he's been to jail 5 times. Oh, okay, criminal. End of story. And then we don't do anything about it. And even in George Floyd's case, I'm pretty sure people are already going to look at his history, because we are trying to change the narrative from the fact that black men have been killed by police in this country for decades and decades. Let me take a little bit of break.
Yeah, we apologize. You're not alone. Just imagine people in the streets right now, not just across the country, but all around the world. It says a lot about what's happening here. So, Dr. Judy, sorry, we had that hiccup there. Your contributions, please.
Is real. Yes. I mean, looking back to our history, how the slaves were brought to the America land, and the way they were treated as a commodity, and the black color associated to the slaves, you can see over time, over history, how people are being treated. And it is just not the black people alone. I mean, over time, if you look in the American history, there's always been either white or black, and black meaning anybody else that is not white. And we have seen how the Native Americans have also been treated, and how they're being pushed to the marginalized areas just because of that. It is very sad to know that even as slavery was abolished, the black color was still treated as an indicator for crimes and a bad thing, and making sure that the black person cannot even catch up. Even with the many years of oppression, we still see when you go to apply for a new job, a form that clearly asks you to define what your race is. When you go to buy groceries or buy gasoline at the gas station, they always ask you for your zip code. A lot of these things are supposed to really contribute. I mean, a lot of these things actually contribute to the racism in America, and as a result, like Professor Otiso was saying, it ends up to having these disparities. Like we have poor health care for the people who are minorities. We have there are people who can't afford good housing. We can't afford good food. The COVID pandemic has affected a lot of Black people, and they're the ones who have actually lost their jobs. I was seeing some of the news showing that a lot of Black people who even were working in the healthcare field are now trying to find jobs at a grocery store or somewhere so that they can actually be able to put food on the table. So is there racism? Yes. Do we experience it? Yes. And regarding the police, I had a chance actually since the death of Mr. Floyd. I've been able to look around a lot about the police in America. And I'm surprised dating into the 60s, 70s that Minneapolis Police Department has always been against. I mean, there's been a lot of force that is used by the police, and they have such a strong union, which makes it very much impossible for people to have justice. So there's so many things which, when I get a chance to explain, have been very, very hard to digest, and even I've lost respect for the law enforcement which is supposed to serve and protect. Clearly, it does not. There has to be a lot to be done and to stop this racism. So,
as you hold the breath on that one, Cosmos, I understand this is a really, really emotional moment, not just for the panelists, but everybody here. But from a more objective standpoint, do the citizens really contribute to this in any way?
I will try not to be emotional this time, but this is a very emotive subject. So I don't know how I can separate myself from the emotion when this is an emotional subject. You understand? And I have had a very close contact with racism, first because I'm Black, and second from the nature of the work I do. I see it every day. So it's a very close topic. So, but I'm gonna try and wear a happy face, but explain very, very emotional things. Before I respond to whether the problem is with the police or with the citizens, I want to piggyback on what Professor Okiso said, that we are all the same, that even Black people in Africa hate on other Black people, tribalism, all those things. Well, okay. Here's how I see it. Professor Tiso is actually using the conservative talking points to try and justify their presumption that Black people are inherently criminal. There's a reason why Black people, especially in this country, behave the way they do. It goes back to 400 years. There's a background to that. In fact, the words of Mandela himself, he said this: if you deny a man the right to live like a honorable human being, his only option is to become an outlaw. If you deny me a job, if you don't want me to live like a human being, if you treat me like an animal, then I'll be an animal. That is why you see those Black people looting shops, because they have used Donald Trump's words himself. What do you have to lose? Black people have lost everything, including their souls. They have nothing to lose. That is why you see them looting those shops. The Target is a symbol of their oppression. Walmart is a symbol of their oppression. AutoZone is a symbol of their oppression. All these businesses, none of them is owned by Black people. How can Black people protect and identify with property that is owned by the master? It's not possible. So let's go back to policing. Don't forget this. The police officers are not Canadians. They are not Kenyans. They're not from Europe. They are Americans. They are plucked from this society, given that uniform to police us. They are citizens. Your neighbor could be a police officer. The attitude of the police is actually a projection of the universal attitude of white people. Inherently, white people, even in Minneapolis, the police department, most of the police officers are white. During the slavery, let's go back a little bit, if you can give me a minute. Let's look at the history of the police. How did America start to using police? There was no police in 1780. There was no police. What they had were vigilante groups, like those groups we have in Kisi, Suneka, and Bonjari, Sungu Sungu. Those were the people. At some point in the southern states, slaves were more than white people. They had more slaves. There was 400,000 white people in the entire South against 4 million slaves. One man could own, I'm talking about human beings, not cows. One man could own 500 slaves to watch his cotton crop, his plantations. This was his property, and they treated us. I am using us because now, and I know most of us immigrants try to create a divide between us and the African Americans. But newsflash, white people don't see any demarcation. They just see black, period. White people treated black men just like animals. And in fact, at some point, they treat animals better. Look at white women and their dogs. Pet dogs are treated much better in this country than black men. I'll go back to that woman who was calling police on a black man for threatening his dog. Like, that is something you can call police on another man. He's threatening your dog. Like, she puts the value of her dog above a black man. So the crime you see in the South Side Chicago, in inner city Minneapolis, in all these big cities among black people, that is not the wish of black people. Just go even in Kenya, where there is a huge population of black people, people who are deprived of humanity. That's what they do. They have no jobs. They have criminal records. They can't do anything. They're sitting idle. Most of them have warrants after them. A lot of them are in and out of jail, like it's a school. Like, most black men, their business is to be in jail, out of jail, probation, out of probation, jail after jail. And if I can give you statistics, Dr. Kari, in this country, black people are only 13% of the entire population of the USA. White people are 64%. But here is the emotional part that I was talking to you about. Now, let us look at the jail population. America, this country, has only 5% of the world population of prisoners. But America has 25% of prisoners in the whole. A quarter of the people in prison in the world are Americans, and most of them are black. A black man is 6 times more likely to be arrested compared to a white man. A Hispanic man, a black man is 2 times more likely to be arrested. So you can see, as the shade of your color gets darker and darker, the more you get criminalized. So I cannot say that it's the citizens, and when you say the citizen, you have to be careful here, because we have 2 Americas. We have the white America and the black America. So I don't know which one you're referring to. I will talk from the point of view of the black America. We are the victims. Just look at the schoolyard. I'll give you a very easy example. Look at the schoolyard in 5th grade, the bully and the victim. We are the victims. What can the victim do to save himself from the bully? Unless the bully is in the conversation, the bullying will continue. It doesn't matter how many shops we loot in Minneapolis, in New York, until the bully, the white people are the bullies, until they come into the conversation and acknowledge that they're bullying us, this thing will continue.
Thank you. Thank you, Ayaka. I always appreciate your very insightful contribution. And by the way, thank you for the historical analysis of racism in this country. It does.
So yeah. So I think the history obviously goes back to the black person being sort of like the revenue generation, like the black generates revenue for America. So let's not forget that part. That's why there was slavery, which was free labor, and after slavery ended, there was prisons, free labor. Let's not forget that part. And then after that, with the way things are right now, there was free labor associated with the black people, even after slavery, because they offered free labor as prisoners. And then came private prisons. Private prison is money. And when you are going to make money with your private prison, you need people to go into prison. You need people to be imprisoned. So we see how black people have been used for so many years just to generate revenue for this country. It is sad, but really that is the basis of this racism that we are facing in this country. I don't know when we'll get to a point when black people will not be used for generating revenue for this country. I don't know, but really that is the history. Slavery ends. Then you have free labor from prisoners in the South mostly. And then someone thought like, oh, what if we throw them in jail and make money out of it? And that's what is happening right now. And that's why black men have to be introduced to the criminal justice at tender ages. 12 years old, you've already been channeled into the system, the justice system. And then it becomes a vicious cycle for the black families.
Reality, and I do appreciate your contribution. I wanted to have Judith in. Judith, can you hear us? Did we lose Judith? Okay, so that's okay. So let's move on, and we'll have her come in. And I'm going to bring in Professor Tiso, if you don't mind. To be realistic about what we're experiencing here. We are immigrants. We definitely came here with a purpose that we need to achieve, and we now just part of the large American society. This country was okay. We do have Dr. Judy back on, so I'm going to go to Judy, and then Dr. Professor Tiso will come up next. So Judy, we're moving on to the next discussion, and this is all about law enforcement officers. So we're recognizing the fact that we are immigrants in this country, and a larger audience is obviously immigrants, and we want to make sure that we focus that part as well. This country was founded on the basis of law. That is a nation led by laws, not by men. So, can you take us through in your view, what should we do, or how should our people relate with law enforcement officers? Because the key goal, we want to make sure that all of those of us who have come here for a common purpose, we want to make sure that collectively and individually we achieve those goals. In your view, how should our people relate with law enforcement officers?
I will try to narrow it to Minnesota just because of what is currently going on. And I realize state to state we have different kind of jurisdictions, so I will just try to narrow it to Minnesota. I'll try to look around, and there's really very little is known about the police agencies and how they work with the immigrant communities. I was astonished to find how many people are arrested, or how many immigrants are arrested each year. And if you look at the numbers, they are raising. The numbers are rising since 2016. We're in the thousands. 2016, 17, 18. The numbers just keep rising, and we realize that this was because of the policies that have been passed by Congress over time. And to see what is going on in the Minnesota Police Department, I am actually very ashamed of the kind of work that they have been doing. Looking at going back and finding out what has been going on, there's very few people have been held accountable for the arresting people and trying to do the right thing, which is to protect and to serve. So when immigrants come here, I was surprised to see some of the things in their training that they tend to believe that a lot of immigrants move from a rural area or a less good-looking place to an urban area where we might not be able to know how to handle the lot of things or be able to obey the laws. So they feel like we sometimes come from a lawless country or some places. So, and that's when you realize sometimes when police come or do their rounds, there's 2 or 3 people, police in the car. And even for the case of George Floyd, you saw 4 people responding to a call for a counterfeit $20 bill. Why will that be the case? Why did they think that they needed 4 people to just respond to a black person? And to realize that's the same thing that they are already thinking, that we are more likely to either commit a crime, or also one other thing I saw, that the police are always feeling like other people might take advantage of the immigrants. So they are always, whenever they're called to the community of immigrants, they are ready to arrest. They're ready to use the force. And so it is sad to know that when I was looking at the records, that there's a lot of police who either use force that is unnecessary or arrest people of the immigrants. And I was even surprised to know that they actually do not organize any kind of connection with, a time that we can connect and know each other. They have distorted information about who we are as immigrants. They don't mean, they probably have failed to realize that there's about over 400,000 immigrants in Minneapolis, and most of us bring about
technical problems. So we can move on to Professor Tiso, and I want to highlight the fact that for the sake of
Mhm. Yeah, let me be practical. I'm not going to deal with the ideal situation where everybody is treated equally under the law. That's not what I'm talking about. So there is the intellectual debate we can have in terms of this is what you should do. But let me just focus strictly on the practicalities of how people should prevent problems, all right? So in other words, I'm looking at prevention is better than cure, even though I understand that we can have a longer discussion on, all the inequalities and those types of injustices, all right? So I mentioned that we need to prevent being victimized by the system. So what this really comes down to is that any contact you have with the police, start with the understanding that you are likely to lose if it goes wrong. It's actually very difficult to convict police in this country, and it's much easier for them to be believed over you. So that being the case, for example, when you are stopped, try to be as polite as possible. Don't even remove the wallet from your pocket without telling him, my license is in my pocket, all right? I'm now going to remove my license from my pocket, all right? All I'm trying to make sure here is that we go home alive. I'm not dealing with the ideal situation here. So usually there are cases I've been stopped like everybody else. I always try to tell him, okay, that my license is in the pocket. I'd like to remove it. Yeah. So keep your hands where they can be seen all the time. The other practical thing is police normally stop people on what they call probable cause. So there has to be something that leads them to believe that you may be up to no good. Again, dealing with practical things, this actually comes down to sometimes things that we may not like to hear, but actually it is what it is, including how somebody may be dressed, for example. Unfortunately, we have a lot of laws in this country about, like, for example, saggy pants and those types of things. Not stuff I necessarily believe, but again, practical stuff. Yeah. The other thing is make sure your car doesn't have a broken tail light, because it actually causes the police to stop you, and in the process of stopping you, then it leads to a number of other issues. So those are ways you can actually reduce the probability that actually you are going to be stopped. Now let me go to the curative side of things. The curative side of things, every one of us should memorize a number of a lawyer, all right? Because the number one reason why we get in trouble is you don't make bail, and you don't have somebody to help you make bail, all right? So we need to know how to do some of these things and memorize that number. Call somebody. Don't spend a night in jail, because it actually leads to a lot of things, a lot of bad things. All right. I did mention here I'm not dealing with the ideal situation. I'm talking practicalities. All right. We may not like it, but those are the practicalities. Okay. By the way, even in my commission, we have a list of lawyers that we consult on short-term basis when we need to. All right. So these are not issues that we like to hear, but it is what it is. Okay. Yes. So you make sure you memorize a lawyer's number. You're coming up. The reality is we need to arrange, make sure we can raise bail when we need to, and some of these practical. Now remember, all I've said here has to do with practical things. I'm not talking about whether we should get no. I mean, you can call it status quo, but it is what it is. Then now let's go and deal with the ideal. The ideal is what we are fighting for. Okay. But what I'm telling you, one second. Let me one second. Remember, we're talking about immigrants. We actually have people we bail out as quickly as we can, because remember, the longer you stay in prison, the more likely you are to lose your job. Even, by the way, be deported. Yeah. So I understand when people hear this, they will think like I'm apologizing for, whatever the status quo might be. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a very different thing in terms of there are things we neglect to do that actually begin the downward spiral. I mean, I don't like it, but it is what it is.
Hold a second. Okay, okay, guys, hold on.
It is the case.
When you put that in context, and Father's Day is coming up soon here, I realize that kid is not going to see our father. We are talking about the immigrant, the Kenya audience in particular. We want to make sure that our young people have come here for a big dream. The fathers in our community. We want to make sure that they make their contribution to their families and the community. So take it from there, Edith.
Okay, so ask that again. My mind actually is burning because I want to actually disagree, again respectfully, with Professor Otiso that how you dress, how you drive is a good thing, but it cannot be the set of rules that some of us have to abide to. Let me point out that a state attorney in Florida, Aramis, I believe Ayala, was stopped by cops. She was not doing anything wrong.
Anybody is doing anything wrong. I think I prefaced my remarks that, remember, the question was very specific. What can we do to limit? What can we do to limit? Huh?
Look, I will go to the schoolyard again. If the victim is bleeding because he received a punch from a bully, you don't blame the victim for not covering his mouth when the bully was punching. That is against the rules of natural justice. Let me tell you, in this country, you talked about probable cause, sorry. Kizungu ilikuja na ndege, so na meli. Probable cause. Remember this. Black people, the black skin, already that is probable cause. If you are black, that's criminal. So I don't know how you can deal with that. Do you hear me? Is my voice clear? Let's go back to South Minneapolis just 1 week ago. What did Floyd not do? He did not argue with the police. He did not fight back, but he's dead. He begged the police officer. He said, I can't breathe, so many times. But the knee kept pressing and pressing until his life was snuffed out. So, Professor, I know you know these things. Just go back 200 years to the southern plantations. The teachings you are telling us right now, and I understand you. I will also tell my son the same things just so that he can come home. But let me tell you, things have not changed. The things you are teaching us to do are the same things for men and white people who are teaching black slaves to do to avoid being lynched. It is the same thing. So black people.
The question is very specific. The question is, and remember, I have a lot of research. I understand that history. Please, I'm not justifying anything. But one of the basics of life is understanding the power differentials and how to deal with them. I'm not arguing Ayaka against that. I'm not arguing against what you're saying, Edith. I'm not blaming the victim. I'm not blaming the victim.
We end up so that we can finish up with the last question.
From religion, from culture, language, names, everything, we have to do the bidding of the white man. The black man has to stand up. Africa has to stand up. The reason we don't have respect, the reason we are being taught how to behave here is because of Africa and its leadership is an embarrassment to the whole world. Until Africa gets its act together, we will continue to die. Mark my words. The reason why Asians, the reason why Arabs, the reason why other people are not victimized on the street is because back home, they have strong systems.
Yeah, yes, sir. Let's move on to the last question as soon as we have Edith back on. Hopefully she can help us in the next discussion. And talk about the last question here. Black men in America seem to be an endangered species. That's, I think, both argument. Of course, I see a very strong argument on both ends of the argument. That's okay. But how can we best protect our own? And I did notice Cosmos, a few days ago, you did post a video on, I think, on Facebook, and I would encourage the audience to go to your Facebook page and listen to that. One of the arguments you're saying, pretty much, we are calling 911 on our own men, and that is endangering our community. But the key question here, perhaps in a more objective way, what do we do to make sure that we protect our men? On you, 1 or 2 minutes. Edit, what do we have? Edit?
Yeah, what?
Time left and emotions are always really, really high. I think maybe what we need to do now is how do we participate in the change that is needed? We already understand stigmatization of the black skin, thugs, criminals. We understand implicit bias. If you see a black man, fear, cross the road, clutch to your purse. We understand all that. So, and I also think we should also recognize that the reason we have the police problem is because society has let that happen. We have the capacity to change that. But then we have a large majority of people who are passively who are passive participants in change that is required. This is the population that we need to, and I probably am one of those. But now it's time for us to actually join the fight and say, fine, we've been passive, we've been sort of, implicit bias, it's something we all kind of have, stereotypes about people. You're told, oh, that's a black man, he's been to jail, he's been to whatever, then he's killed by the police. And you feel sad, but it doesn't feel like something that will affect you. But George Floyd, we looked at him and we were like, oh my gosh, that could be my son. We probably said the same about the others, but this person was defenseless, was listening to the cops, anyway, let me not go back to that because it'll make me more emotional. How do we move forward? I think that should be the question right now. How we move forward is to join the fight. And by joining the fight, I mean we need to have policies changed. We need to participate in voting. Don't just vote and walk away. Vote and follow up with who you voted for. Don't let it be, I voted, wait 5 years, and then you go to vote again. Like, oh, like we need to participate in the change actively, not passively. We need to be actively involved. We need, as Africans in Minnesota right now, we actually now need to start pushing for some of us to join leadership in this community. Let's just not be passive. That time for being passive is gone, because when you're passive, you don't think like what's happening to other people can happen to you, even when you know it's wrong. So we really need to join forces, and this time we need change, because Floyd's life should not go down in vain.
2 minutes, okay. I have a book here that I want to recommend to all Kenyan immigrants to go to the Atlantic. If anybody wants it, inbox me, I can send it to you. It's called The Black Family in the Age of Mass Incarceration by Dan Patrick. It was written in the 60s during the era of Lyndon Johnson and Richard Nixon. Dan Patrick said this, and I want to read it verbatim. The very essence of the male animal, be it human or just animals in the zoo or in the forest, the very essence of a male animal, from this bantam rooster, a rooster is a chicken, to the foster general soldiers, is to strut. The male gender, a man needs to flex. The ratio system that we live in has disarmed the Black community of its defenses. They have actively taken away the man and left the woman to take care of the children, minus the protective capacity of the man. That's why our jails are full of young, productive, very healthy men. That is for a purpose. Don't be like that it's a criminal justice system. That is for a purpose, to disarm the African community. Now I want to narrow this down, and I want to be with Professor this time, to our community. Now that we understand this, why should I call a police officer on you, Dr. Kari, if I know that that's almost signing a death warrant on you? The African community has to have its own informal justice system. And I was impressed by the Ethiopian community. I participated in one. They have a community sentence in Paul, and I was involved with the police, and we had infringed on the rights of a certain family. The Ethiopian community came at us in such a strong force that we had to apologize, because they're organized. And they told us on our face that in our community, we partner with the police. No youth, nobody gets arrested until our elders are consulted. The police know them, they have their phone numbers. If they suspect somebody's a criminal, they contact the elders, they discuss, and if it is something they can do within the community to stop the arrest and eventual prosecution, then the matter is handled within the community. We don't have that as Kenyans. All we have is 911. Eventually, we will be disarmed, and this maternalistic structure will be forced on us, and all the young men among Kenyan families will be in jail or serving probation or somewhere, and then our women and children will be left alone, and we will be just like those African Americans in North Minneapolis. To finish, Dr. I want to read this one, because a lot of Africans believe, immigrants, Kenyans, we believe we are different. We believe we are educated, we have good jobs, we are all set. Listen to this. And this one is also in this one. Many Black youths, and I want to replace Black youth to Kenyans, Kenyan immigrants. Many Kenyan immigrants are entrapped. Many of those who escape, those of us who have education, we believe we have escaped. We live in the suburban areas, we don't live in North Minneapolis. Do so for one generation. We will only escape the wrath of the police for one generation. Only our children, the children will have to run the whole system again. Unfortunate, but true.
Cosmos, Professor Tiso.
Well, things how in terms of how we move forward, one is obviously agreeing with the need to agitate for change. Yeah. So we really need to be the solution that we seek. to see in society. And really some of the things I was saying early on in terms of what we're doing as a commission, a lot of them have to do with actually being willing to put our hands, make our hands dirty to solve some of these issues. I teach some of this material in class. I can be very theoretical, I know this history very well. But remember, everybody does not have the benefit of having a lesson that is 10, 20, 40 minutes when you are rotting in jail. So some of the things I said in terms of how you prevent issues still remain. We have to use wisdom. Wisdom is applied knowledge. You have to assess every situation to know, what am I going to use in this particular circumstance? Yeah. So when I'm talking of having a lawyer's number, it's not that I'm escaping anything. It's not that I don't know the history. These things are there. Number two is we need to be bridge builders. Some of us here on this call are the ones that actually, one, have this knowledge and also have an ability to engage with the majority culture in positive ways, including, for example, some of the work I'm doing with the police in our own state. We used to have the driver's license exam not having African languages, but now African languages have shown up, So that's why I'm saying that after the emotionalism is done, and remember, Ayaka, one of the other reasons why we're not respected is we actually become emotional. We don't think strategically. Jews were almost in the same position where we were, but they have grown their power substantially. Yes, after the emotionalism, let's be strategic. Let's apply. Let's apply the rules. Let's learn. Actually, in a capitalistic system. That's not what I'm saying. Listen. Emotions. Let's find a way of actually now being strategic and getting things done. Now, that's what I'm suggesting here is this. We have to learn the rules like other countries have done. Asian countries have learned the rules of capitalism, and they have learned to apply them and succeed. Some of them actually started when they were much poorer than Kenya is. The difference is that we have not learned the rules and know how to play the game effectively. And I know some people will misunderstand that, but until we learn the rules and learn how to apply them, we will dance around the track all we want, but we'll be back in square one. Anyway, let me deal with solutions. Be the bridge builder. Bridge building is not weakness. It is an understanding of where you're beginning from and where you are going, and the amount of time you have, and the skills that you need, and the resources that you need. It's easier actually to engage with the police as bridge builders than actually to try to disarm them, for example. It's much easier. It's much easier to deal with their humanity first. And also then look at some of the things to do with the laws and the policies and the like. This is why I've been encouraging people, even in our own WhatsApp group, be engaged in these governments. They don't understand us because we are in these chat rooms, but we don't go out and engage. We're not the bridge builders. No matter how much we talk in these chat rooms, they're not here. We have to engage with them, educate them, like you're using the example of the Ethiopians. That is actually an effective bridge building engagement. It's not that the Ethiopians don't know the history of this country. And by the way, speaking of the Kenyans are not any better than anybody who does not understand the history of this country and thinks that just because you're an immigrant, you're better than, doesn't understand a lot. What I'm suggesting is even after you understand that, then what is the next step? The next step is learn the rules and apply them in a manner that actually you can win. Okay, the other one is to educate the majority population. Most of us have bridge building means actually you have to educate one or two white people in terms of, okay, it is not what you think about every black person. And the truth of the matter is, we may not agree. The truth of the matter is every white person is not bad, as difficult as that may be. There are that are actually are bothered by what is going on. So that's why that's why we have to learn what to apply when and what to say when. Don't lose a friend because you want to be right for 50 seconds. And then you lose a strategic person that actually can make your life a lot easier. So this is what I'm getting at, and unfortunately, you don't have the option of saying this in a WhatsApp group, and people think you're apologizing for the system. When in fact there is a lot that actually can be done by being strategic, thinking through something, thinking long term, thinking of how we invest in businesses, thinking about that. Is actually the whole reason why I'm in community organizing. We have to think long term. So then the other thing is to now that is actually at the human level, and then there is a spiritual level of these things. Again, we can disagree, but that's what it is. There is a spiritual that what I've said is actually the human level. There is a spiritual level here, which is how evil has shown up in our society. Yaka, you said early on, these are lost souls. Now, here's something perhaps you also want to realize. While white society has been oppressing black people, their souls have not been spared. When you invest in hate for the purpose of economic advancement, your own soul gets corroded in the process. And actually, some of the reasons why these police are behaving the way they are behaving is because they have lost their souls in the process. Oppressing another human being is one of those things that you cannot get away with at the level of your soul and spirit. Physically, you can look good, you can drive a nice car and look like, oh, I'm doing well, I'm making a lot of money. But you cannot oppress a human being without corroding your own soul. You cannot be hateful without paying the price for that hate. You cannot be a loving person without receiving the fruit of what you have planted. So some of the violence you see in American society is not just the corrosion of black society. It is also the corrosion of white society. This is why people have lost personhood. And therefore, when we are saying, oh, how can you put your neck on a human being for 9 minutes? Because you have lost your personhood. Because if you had your personhood, you will know that you don't do that. And why did we lose our personhood? We have lost our relationship with America. So we don't even understand we are the same people. We are all made from the same blood. We have the different color, just like General Motors makes some cars red, some cars white, some cars green, but the engine is the same. That is the essence of human. So when you lose the definition that comes from your America, you lose personhood. When you lose personhood, you lose brotherhood. Notice we are talking to blacks and whites as if we are different. No, we are not. We are behaving so because we don't know where we have come from. So when you have lost fatherhood, you lose personhood, then you lose brotherhood, then you lose neighborhood. We are here trying to fix the neighborhood without the preceding steps. And I can guarantee you, as humans, will try. And I fight every day, by the way. I fight every day. But the solution does not seem to rely on human effort alone, but understanding where we have come from. So let me stop. Let me and we are coming back to that. So in other words, I'm looking at engaging this thing in two levels. There is the human engagement and there's the spiritual engagement, because evil is actually precisely what we're dealing with. This is the nature of evil. It takes advantage of people. It takes advantage of babies that are 2 days old. It takes advantage of the weak, and on and on.
Okay, quickly.
I want to give you a quick background and ask you a question. Even the number of black people that have been killed by the police, the amount of injustice that the police have committed against black people. Finally, we had justice served last year against a police officer. Do you find it ironical that the first victim to receive justice was a white woman? And the first police officer to go to jail was a black police officer. Does it disturb your thinking? Here's my question. No, before you respond.
No.
Okay.
Of Minnesota, Kate Elson said this. While all 4 officers involved in the death of George Floyd are now charged, that's the Attorney General, the most senior legal officer in Minnesota. Convicting them will be hard. Comment on that.
Make sure that we change the laws. I can actually give you one thing that actually is missing. Once we are done marching on the streets, we should have civilian police oversight boards in all of these cities. But that's actually what is missing. If you don't have a civilian police oversight board, the union will always win. So this is why I'm telling you that after you are done with the anger, we need to think strategically. We need to change the laws. We actually need to. We actually need to.
Until we change the policy, Professor.
Execute police even at a higher level of responsibility.
Accountable for so many years.
Without due respect, gentlemen. Our gentleman,
strategic. It's not from emotionalism. And you think I don't understand these things? I understand them. I weep here. You don't see me weeping. No, you don't see me weeping here. You know. But here's the thing. Now that we are done with the emotion, what next? After we're done marching, how many of us are going to vote? After we're done marching, how many of us are going to?
We want the law to be the law for all of us. We don't want two sets of laws. We don't want two sets of laws. We want laws that are for everyone. And then, okay, go ahead, Jeremiah.
I agree with you. 1 second. The law, has, by the way, the law from the beginning has kind of been a law that actually can be tailored to be uniform, to apply to all in more ways than one. But the question becomes now in 2020, how do we show up and make sure what you are saying happens? That's actually what I keep coming back to.
but before we do so, let's respect the lady in the room. She's been trying to say something. Edith, can we give you 2 minutes before, as a gentleman, prepare for their closing statement?
Yeah, what I want to say is that moving forward, we need to avoid these undertones like, oh, be respectful. People are respectful when they meet the police. We know that. We're just saying we do not want two sets of laws. I don't want to suppress my emotions just because I'm black. I want my emotions to come out if I'm angry. So, having said that, I still believe, of course, we have to respect police in our interactions. But I do not want to feel like I have to go above and beyond and be more extra respectful just because my life is in danger. And that's why once the policies have been changed, once the laws have been put in place, that the police respect all of human life, and that if I am arrested, I am my rights are not violated, and my like the due process, my due process is not violated. So until we have one set of rules for the justice system for everyone, that's when things will change. I don't want black people to constantly live in fear, like, oh my gosh, how will I behave? Oh, am I, you meet a cop, you're stopped, you're like, sir, my pass, my ID is in my pass, and I am going to reach for it. Now I'm raising my right hand, now I'm reaching for it. White people don't talk like that. I do not want to talk like that. I want to be respectful. If they ask for my ID, I'll be like, okay, here it is, sir. I don't want to be afraid and try to explain about where I'm going to get it from just because I'm black.
5 minutes past a lot of time. Let's go to the closing statement. After all been said and done, Ayaka, in a sentence, in 1 minute, your closing statement, please.
Long I can say a million things. Professor and everyone in the panel, I don't want to teach my children things that white people don't teach their children and pretend that we're living in an equal society. I want my child to be out there, feel safe, just like the white kids feel safe. I don't want my kids to operate under a different set of rules from white kids, and then we pretend that we live in an equal society. That's not good. I want to give you 2 examples. I have Darren Roof in South Carolina, who just slaughtered 9 black men worshiping in a church. And when the police catch up with him, they take him to a restaurant and buy him a snack before they put him in handcuffs. Then we have a black man in Minneapolis who is just writing $20 bill. I don't know whether it was forgery, whatever it was. And he loses his life in the most inhuman way. So we can argue, we can say, until we change the rules, whatever conversations we have with white people, and we've been having this conversation, by the way, Professor, and I know you know that, I respect that, for 400 years, they have never led us anywhere. We're still the victims. So we have to change the tactics. Remember them, Mandela did not just talk, he acted. Martin Luther King did not just talk, he acted. Malcolm X, all of those people did not just talk, and that's why we celebrate them. So as black people, as we engage white people in conversations, let us also have other strategies. We must have a real threat to these people. So Maumau did not win the war by sitting. They had to go to the bush. I'm not advocating for violence, but we have to rethink. If we sit in church and preach and pray and talk, we will forever be suppressed. We black people should stop being cowards, come out and fight for our rights It is our right. We are human beings.
We're actually talking of differences of strategy here, but you need both sides. I think I don't know how the perception came across that I'm not for change. The issue is there are practical things that are short term, and then there are medium strategies, there are long-term strategies, and we have to apply all of them in order to win. Number two, let's engage. I've tried to engage for a long time, and I don't have enough time to tell you the outcome of those engagements. We have to be strategic. I keep saying that, and it comes out as weakness, but actually you'll be surprised how much you can do behind doors negotiating with people. But you have to be at the table, not just in WhatsApp, at the table. And Ayaka, you remember this is why I told people, get in these state commissions, because I know their power. They form policy, When the governor of Minnesota was making a statement the other day, I think I saw a gentleman of Somali origin saying something about COVID-19. I did not see a Kenyan standing there. Those are the realities I'm talking about. Yes, let's make all the noise we want, but we want to be strategic. We want to be in the table, around the table when these decisions are being made. So if we're not there, we're losing out. Let's learn the rules of engagement, apply them strategically, and we will win. We cannot win by just thinking that we are victims, even when we have power and we have knowledge that actually can allow us to do some of these things. But it's actually where I'm coming from, and it doesn't mean we are better than or anybody's better than. But we cannot not use what is already in our power and think that making noise will take us anywhere. And of course, I know about liberation movements, violence, arms have won in some cases. But to conclude very quickly, while we're talking about this history, let's also be honest enough to recognize that there has been some change. We can disagree on how much change there has been, but there has been some change, at least.
We are running against time here. Let's go to the closing statement, and let's have now edit closing statement in 2 minutes.
Okay, I'll do that real fast. But first of all, Professor Otiso, 95% of the time we agree with you. We just disagree with reinforcing the status quo. That's what we are saying, and that's why I keep saying I do not want a different set of rules just because I'm black. 95% of the time, you and I believe Ayaka, are on the same page. Well, having said that is, where do we go from here? Remember what JFK said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Let's not forget that. And that's why now is the time, now more than ever, is the time for all of us to join forces, because we've been passive. We've been passive in all these killings. People die, and we kind of, just because of implicit bias, again, like I said before, we wake up the next morning, we are sad, then we forget about it. But now is the time to realize that this is too close to home, what happened to George Floyd. So because of that, the fight that we need to put forward is vote. If you're not in a position to vote, encourage people who are in a position to vote to go out and vote. And on top of that, we need end of mass incarceration of Black people. We need education system change. We need the inner cities to get education that I can get in the suburbs. We need the healthcare system to be changed for the people in the inner cities. We want to make sure that everyone in the country is healthy. Everyone in the country needs to be able to get access to quality education. We need to stop breaking the Black families. This thing of grabbing kids from Black families and taking them who knows where, there has to be a change in how they go about that. And then and of course there's the housing. Having said that, my conclusion again, something I've been saying over and over again, we just need the same set of rules for all of us.
And always, given the time allotted to this discussion, I just want to start by thanking all of you. I want to thank you, Cosmas, for your insightful contribution. Thank you very much. And by the way, your contribution to the community is well known and very much appreciated. And obviously, we're going to have discussions offline and in our social media platforms. That would be appreciated. I also received a text message from Dr. Judith. Unfortunately, a technical problem, and she could not continue being on, but we do appreciate her contribution. I think was very, very, very productive, and we hope to have her back on in our next session. I can't thank you enough, Edith. I think your contributions are very, very insightful, very, very welcome, and I think the community will definitely continue to appreciate what you're doing on the social media and what you're doing in the community. I'm sure again we'll have you in our next discussion. Professor Otiso, we can't thank you enough. I think your contribution on this forum is evident. You're very insightful, and above all, your contribution to the community and across the country. You're a great son of Kenya. Your contribution to raising the flag of Kenya higher than it is very much appreciated. I also want to thank very much our technical team, KDL TV, Kebuato, and the team. Sorry for technical issues. It was the first time we're doing this. Hopefully the next time will be much better, but much appreciation from our end. And then for our general public, those of us who've been tuning on and who'll be listening to this later, I want to thank you again for listening to us. But again, yes. On that note, may I let the audience know that Professor Otiso is neighbor to Ayaka, and Ayaka is neighbor to Professor Otiso. No wonder we had and Kefa was, no doubt about it, a great hero of mine. But and everybody's angry. So, but again, thank you very much for listening to us. What I'm going to say, in as much as we're going through this difficult time, it's a moment of reflection. Let's do this on individual basis. What's happening in the street, quite frankly, is not just black and white. It's all about humanity and mankind. So it's a moment for us to reflect on who we are as individuals, as a community. And on a positive note, let's pull together so that we can come out of this in a much better way than we are. I think the over 110,000 Kenyans that we have in the US, I think if we put our efforts together, as we've seen evidence in this discussion, I think we can do better. Again, on behalf of the KDL TV crew here, I want to say thank you very much for being on, and stay safe.